What gives an army its edge? Is it sheer numbers, advanced weaponry, or brilliant tactics? For the Zulu warriors, their most devastating weapon wasn't something you could see. It resonated in the air. It was sound. Picture yourself standing on the vast African savanna at dawn. The golden light stretches across the land, and a heavy silence lingers, calm but unsettling. Suddenly the quiet breaks. A low, rhythmic stomp begins, deliberate and measured, reverberating through the ground. It grows louder, joined by a deep, resonant chant, perfectly synchronized, like a heartbeat rising from the earth itself. Then the cries, a thunderous, unified roar that pierces the air and crashes over the plains like a wave. It doesn't just echo, it consumes. This was the Zulu battle cry, a weapon that struck fear deeper than any blade. It wasn't noise for the sake of chaos, it was calculated and purposeful, engineered to intimidate and destabilize. Even before a single spear flew, the battle was already being fought, not on the ground but in the minds of their enemies. British soldiers who faced the Zulu during the Anglo-Zulu War described these cries with awe and terror. One officer wrote, "It wasn't just the sound, it was the way it filled the air, as if the land itself had come alive." Hardened men, veterans of many battles, found themselves rattled by the unrelenting storm of sound. It felt unnatural, as though the cries were not simply human, but something primal, something unstoppable. But the Zulus' use of sound wasn't just about frightening their enemies. It was a rallying force for their own warriors. The cries unified them, synchronizing their movements and binding their courage together. When hundreds of voices rose as one, it wasn't just a signal of attack, it was a declaration of unity and strength. Sound became their strategy and fear their weapon, one that could shatter the confidence of an enemy long before the first strike. The Zulu didn't just prepare for battle, they shaped the battlefield with the power of their voices. Fear. It's universal. It seeps into the bravest of hearts and turns strength into hesitation. The Zulu warriors knew this intimately, and they wielded fear as if it were their sharpest spear. Their battle cries weren't random shouts, they were precision-engineered psychological strikes aimed directly at the minds of their foes. British accounts of the Anglo-Zulu War bring this tactic to life. Imagine being among those soldiers, standing under the unforgiving African sun. At first there's a distant murmur, so faint it could be the wind, but it grows. It's not the wind, it's voices, hundreds, maybe thousands, rising in perfect rhythm. Then comes the roar, a singular, unified eruption of sound so powerful, it feels like it's shaking the ground beneath your feet. You feel it not just in your ears, but in your chest, in your bones. It's relentless, deafening, and entirely inescapable. This wasn't just noise, it was a psychological weapon, crafted with precision. The timing was deliberate, the crescendo perfectly calculated to overwhelm the enemy's senses. Each cry amplified the Zulu's presence, creating the illusion that their numbers were endless. The battlefield wasn't just filled with sound, it was consumed by it, leaving no room for calm or reason. For the Zulu, the battle cry wasn't just about scaring their enemies, it was about empowering themselves. As their voices merged into one, it reminded every warrior of their shared purpose. They were no longer individuals, they were a single, unstoppable force. The same sound that brought fear to their enemies brought courage to the Zulu, binding them together in an unbreakable rhythm. To their British adversaries, it sounded like chaos, but the reality was the opposite. The Zulu cries were precise, orchestrated, and devastatingly effective. Each chant and roar was a piece of a larger strategy, designed to destabilize, distract, and dominate. The battlefield wasn't just a place of physical combat, it was a stage for psychological warfare. And the Zulu were masters of it. Through their cries, they didn't just fight battles, they controlled them. Fear was their tool, and through sound, they wielded it with unmatched expertise. The Zulu warriors weren't just terrifying, they were methodical. Behind the ferocity of their cries lay a carefully executed strategy, perfected through discipline and ingenuity. At the heart of their battlefield success was the legendary horns of the buffalo formation. But this wasn't just a formation of movement, it was a symphony of sound and coordination designed to unnerve, overwhelm, and ultimately dismantle their enemies. Imagine standing in the path of the Zulu Impi, The first thing you see is the chest, the central force of their army, charging forward with relentless determination. Their chants begin. Steady, deliberate, and deafening. It's not just noise, it's rhythm. Each stomp of their feet, each shout in unison reinforces their presence. But while your attention is locked on the advancing chest, the horns are already in motion. These flanking forces swing wide with precision, encircling you with cries that seem to erupt from all sides. The battlefield becomes a storm of sound, disorienting and fracturing your ranks. And then there's the loins, the reserve force, silent and still, waiting for the perfect moment. Even their silence is strategic, a psychological pressure that leaves the enemy guessing, unnerved by the sheer control of an army that seems to hold power in every direction. When the loins finally move, their voices explode into the chaos, amplifying the panic and sealing the fate of the encircled foe. This wasn't just physical strategy, it was psychological genius. The Zulu didn't fight with brute force alone. They fought with precision and discipline. Their cries weren't just tools of fear, they were instruments of control. Whistles, chants, and signals communicated every movement across the battlefield. What their enemies perceived as chaos was, in truth, a perfectly coordinated performance. Every voice, every step, every strike was part of a larger plan. The Zulu Impi transformed the battlefield into a theater of psychological warfare. Their cries weren't just an introduction to battle. They were the thread that wove their strategy together. Fear, sound, and discipline were the fabric of their victories, making them one of the most formidable fighting forces in history. They didn't just react to the enemy, they dictated the terms of the battle, and sound was their compass. The power of the Zulu battle cry didn't fade with time. Their mastery of sound and its psychological effects echoes through history, finding new relevance in the modern world. The principles they perfected, fear, rhythm, and unity, are still wielded in battles, arenas, and movements today. Consider the haka, the war dance performed by New Zealand's All Blacks rugby team before every match. With their synchronized movements and chants, the haka mirrors the Zulu battle cry, a display of strength and unity designed to intimidate opponents before the first whistle. It's not just a cultural tradition, it's psychological warfare in its purest form, echoing the tactics of the Zulu Impi. Even in modern warfare, sound remains a critical tool. Marching cadences keep soldiers synchronized and focused, building morale and fostering unity just as the Zulu chants did. And then there are sonic weapons, devices capable of disorienting, incapacitating, or even paralyzing crowds through sound alone. These modern technologies are a direct testament to the enduring power of sound as a weapon, a lesson the Zulu mastered long before it was studied scientifically. But sound's influence isn't confined to the battlefield. In protests, chants unite movements and amplify their presence. In sports, coordinated cheers energize teams and intimidate rivals. The principles are the same. Rhythm creates unity, and unity creates power. The Zulu's legacy teaches us something profound. Power isn't always visible. A roar can shatter resolve. A rhythm can bind people together. Silence can carry the weight of 1,000 voices. The battlefield may change, but the tools of psychological warfare remain the same. The cries of the Zulu warriors have long since faded, but their lessons endure. They remind us that strength isn't just physical, it's psychological. They showed us that sound, rhythm, and timing can shape the course of history. The Zulu didn't just fight wars, they redefined how wars could be fought. And even now, their roar echoes, a timeless challenge to think differently about the nature of power.